Well, welcome everyone. My name is Faith Behrens, and I'm a homeschooling mom of two, and I'm also a special needs consultant with HSLDA part-time. And I'm going to be speaking to you in this session about homeschooling students with unique challenges or struggles and how you can do this and you can be confident in homeschooling your child that has unique learning challenges. So I want to start off this session and just tell you a little bit about myself. I've been homeschooling since 2008. And prior to homeschooling, I was a public school teacher as well as a private school teacher, and I worked as an educational therapist, doing an ILD and a reading specialist. I had taught for Department of Defense schools as well a couple of years. And then when my daughter was in kindergarten part-time, she went half day. In the afternoons, I was home with her and kind of just fell into homeschooling, fell in love with it, and didn't want to send her to school full-time for first grade. And she had some unique learning challenges with attention and some low frustration tolerance. And she was a really advanced reader, but really struggling with mathematics. And so homeschooling appealed to us to be able to meet her where she was, but also just to meet our family needs. I wanted to be able to be home with her and be the one pouring into her. And homeschooling really allowed us a lot of freedom and flexibility on many fronts, but also to meet her learning struggles. And that was really important along the way as she continued to progress, and we would see scatters in her progress in different areas. And so home education really allowed us to meet her needs, remediate things, teach at her own rate, her own pace, address skills and fill in gaps, take time for therapy when that was needed, and then also teach to her strengths and really customize and tailor a program for her when she hit high school. And she successfully graduated, and we're still homeschooling our 12-year-old son, who has some differences as well with auditory processing and some other unique needs. But all that to say, that's just a little bit about me. And I want to encourage you that no matter what your child's diagnosis is, or no matter their unique learning challenges, I think that you will find that home education is truly an individualized education plan, and it can be a great way to meet your child's needs. So with that being said, let's dive into this session. And I do want to apologize for my scratchy throat. I've been fighting some sickness the last couple of weeks, so I'm recuperating from that. So I don't have a strong voice right now. But we'll dive into the meat of this session, and I hope that you find it encouraging. I do want to encourage you to download the resource guide that's been provided from HSLDA's special needs consultants. It's called Steps for Success for special needs students and special needs homeschooling. And we hope that you find that encouraging. So one of the first things that I want to share as we started with this session is that you are the expert when it comes to your child. Nobody knows your child better than you. And that home education really, truly is an individualized educational plan, and it can be an excellent one. But I do want to encourage you to realize that you cannot do this all by yourself. You have to find community and find support. You don't want to be a lone ranger. So don't be afraid to ask for help. And so I'm glad you're here in this session and on this summit, on this conference, because I think that's a great way to find community and support, be that through a curriculum provider or publisher, has group support. That's a great way. HSLDA offers wonderful support for you. We are a community and we've been around for over 35 years, helping to make homeschooling possible. So we want to be able to come alongside you as well. And our learning consultants, educational consultants in high school, early years, which is pre-K through middle, and then the special needs consultants, we're here to support you every step along the way and can help you with transcripts and planning and curricula consultations and things like that. Also, you can find good community online. There's other organizations like SPED Homeschool, and SPED Homeschool is a national charitable organization, and they offer resources and webinars and therapy listings, partners. So there's lots of resources there at SPED Homeschool, and I'm privileged to serve on their board. The founder of SPED Homeschool is Peggy Ployhard. She's wonderful, a homeschooling parent herself, who's walked this journey of homeschooling a child with special needs. And she just has a real heart to serve. So you can find community there as well. Finding a mentor can be really priceless. For me, having a mentor early on when I was homeschooling happened to be one of my colleagues, but she ended up to be a great mentor for me and helped me with how to organize my day and how to homeschool, as well as how do I do that around working part-time and managing the household as well. So tapping into your local community support groups as well, and even the online support groups. So be sure to line up supplemental help support for yourself, and but also to line up therapy, or maybe you want to outsource some of your classes or some of your coursework. Maybe you need to find a tutor, and that can be another great way to just take some of the stress off. And then it can also help with the parent-child relationship. So we've done that along the way, where we've outsourced via co-op, online classes, tutor, community college, enlisting a friend, swapping, doing some home-based co-op groups, family groups, things like that. Also tapping into national charitable organizations is a great way to find support and therapy. And a lot of times too, parents will ask, well, in order to get therapy or extra support, that can be cost prohibitive. So how can I get support with funding special therapy or extra classes? One place to look is HSLDA's Compassion. That's our charitable arm. And we do have grants available for families, particularly for students that have special needs. So be sure to check out Compassion. It's HSLDA's charitable arm. So those are just some ways to try to find support and community. And again, I encourage you to don't be a lone ranger, because we all need one another. We need community. All right. So now let's talk about a little more in depthly of actually how can home education be that individualized educational plan? How can it be an IEP, so to speak? So I want you to think of a stool that has three legs or three prongs. And if we're going to support our student, if our student's going to sit on that stool, we need to think about the three legs of support. And so the three prongs, or the three legs of your customized home education plan, are educate, remediate, and accommodate. And so with your home education, you're going to be providing one-on-one direct instruction. So maybe it's 2-on-1. Maybe you have two kids you're teaching at the same time. Maybe you have 6. But for reading and math, they're going to get direct instruction, hopefully just one-on-one with you at their level. And then the other subjects you can put kids together for. And there'll be times during the day where all the kids might be working together on something, or they're all maybe at the table or sitting on the floor together, all doing math, but they're all doing math at their individual levels, or somebody's, two kids are playing a math game and you're at the kitchen table doing a one-on-one mini lesson, a short lesson with one of the kiddos. But they are going to be getting one-on-one direct instruction throughout the day and throughout the week. And that's very powerful. And it will be at their level. And so that is the first prong of support, is that you are teaching them at their level, at a pace of instruction that's appropriate for them. And so you know what their functioning levels are, and you know their strengths and your weaknesses. You're also able to teach them material that is motivating to them, or something that they're interested in, and you can customize it. So let's say you have a high school student who, for high school, they need to take, say your state says they need to take 3 sciences, and at least one of those has to be a lab science. Well, maybe they take a general science and that has some labs in it, but they're really interested in astronomy, or they're really interested in marine biology or geology. There's nobody saying that you have to teach, physics, chemistry, biology, and, whatever else it may be. So you can customize based on your students' interests as well, not just their functioning level, but you can also base that on their capabilities, their post-secondary goals. So the educate prong is the first leg of the stool, or the first prong, and the first way that we're supporting them and giving them an individualized education plan. And you can customize too with their extracurricular activities, and to be sure to teach self-help skills and those soft skills to help them launch and to be successful post-secondary. So we want to be sure to take time to plan for job shadowing and volunteering, work experience, and things like that, and extracurricular activities based around things that they're interested in and their areas of strength. So again, that's your first prong, is that one-on-one direct instruction that's customized for them. And then the second one is to remediate. And a lot of times in schools, we'll do some remediation in the early years in elementary school, but typically what happens in middle school is we start to do what's called transition planning, and we start planning for how we're going to help this student transition to high school and then post-secondary. And a lot of the support and therapies and things that they may have gotten tend to go away. So that remediation phases out. And with homeschool, we have the ability to keep remediating and keep addressing those weak processing areas, providing specific therapy and interventions, tutoring, so that we can actually strengthen the weak areas. Because if we don't strengthen the weak areas and remediate, then all we're left with is a third prong, or the third leg of that stool of support, and that's accommodate. And schools are really good at accommodating students, expecting less, allowing for different ways of taking in information, and even modifying curriculum, and quite frankly, or lowering expectations, or modifying the level of work that a student is required to do. But again, that's not remediating and strengthening anything. It's just accommodating. It's just helping them work around, or expecting less. And so in homeschool, we can offer accommodations for our students to help them work around the challenges that they're facing. So what are some accommodations and some examples of things that you can do in your homeschool to help your student be successful? You can offer books on audio. You can use assistive technology. You can change the method of how the student is being tested or given a quiz instead of writing essays. Let's say they have dysgraphia. Maybe you're going to do fill in the blank or multiple choice or matching format, or maybe you're going to allow for oral testing and oral presentations. Maybe you're going to put the closed captioning on the TV or the program or the DVD that they're following along with and learning. Again, getting books on audio or using a reading pen, using the assistive tech tools like Dragon Note, Dragon Dictate, things like that are all ways to accommodate the student. Maybe we're going to give them enlarged text if they have a visual processing problem. Maybe we are going to reduce the amount of copying that's required, or we're going to provide notes and handouts ahead of time for the student, things like that. So those are the ways that we can support the student and give them this individualized education plan at home. Educate, remediate, and accommodate. And by doing these things, you can feel confident that you're tailoring instruction and intervention to your student. And you're going to help them meet his or her needs. Providing therapy, looking into things like equine therapy or art therapy, as well as the traditional therapies like occupational therapy or physical therapy, speech and language therapy. Therapies as well as cognitive therapy can be very helpful. For our son, we did equine therapy, and that helped with following directions, auditory memory, confidence, low frustration tolerance, following directions. Our daughter did 1 year of cognitive therapy with Equipping Minds, and we counted that as a study skills course elective, as well as logic. And she did that her 8th grade year, and it really helped her with her processing speed and working memory, which then translated to standardized test taking. So be sure to figure out what types of therapies and interventions you need to incorporate into your home education plan and document that, and know that those are important pieces of that individualized education plan for your student. All right. So in this next section, I wanted to address some of the frequently asked questions that often come with homeschooling students with special needs or unique challenges. And one of the biggest questions is a legal question. And while I'm not an attorney and I'm not on the legal staff with HSLDA, I'm on the educational consultant side of things, I can answer this question generally, but the question is, from a legal standpoint, are there additional requirements when it comes to homeschooling kids with special needs? And the short answer is typically no. Generally, in most states, there aren't any extra requirements when it comes to kids with special needs. Typically, you just follow whatever your state's homeschool laws are. Now, there are some exceptions. So I would encourage you to check HSLDA's website out and look at your state and see what your state requirements are specifically. But most states don't have any other further requirements or hoops to jump through when it comes to kiddos with special needs. There are a few states that might have some unique requirements, and there are some states that are more rigorous in their oversight with homeschoolers. In particular, those states would be Pennsylvania, New York, and California, just to name a few. But generally speaking, there aren't extra requirements. Some states do have standardized testing requirements, or they want your student to have some type of portfolio review or end of year assessment. So we can assist you with that, or I can assist you with that. Also, your local and your state homeschool organizations can provide you with guidance about how to meet those requirements. And the other question we get a lot of times when it comes to homeschooling kiddos with special needs is, can I get assistance through the public school? And or should I, is that advised? And I will say that you can. So in every state, any child is eligible to be evaluated. So you can go to your public school district and ask, can you evaluate my student? And they're required to do so. If you put that request in writing, they have 60 to 90 days under the law to initiate testing or an evaluation for your student. But not every state's required to serve homeschoolers, meaning offer any support to them. So it varies from state to state and sometimes even district to district, whether they'll offer any special services or related services like therapy, or if students can take any extra like outside classes. So you can check HSLDA's website to see what your state's special education provisions are for homeschoolers. But even if you are allowed access to, let's say, special services like therapy through your school district, HSLDA's attorneys would caution about that because often with the services come strings attached. But again, you can obtain an evaluation for your child, but you may want to carefully consider whether you want to take on public school services because sometimes strings are attached to those, and parents can then sometimes encounter unwanted legal entanglements with school districts. So HSLDA stands as private services, if possible, are best. But sometimes lining up private services can be costly, or if you live in a rural area or there's not a lot where you are, that can be tricky. But more and more providers are doing teletherapy. So with the technology, there's opportunities available. So you want to check out SPED Homeschool and HSLDA's website pages, and we have lots of recommendations for how to find therapy or how to even do therapy at home, therapy partners, different interventions that you can implement at home, different companies that provide tele-interventions like interventions and tutoring for dyslexia, for instance. So there's a lot out there now, a lot more there used to be. So don't be discouraged. Another question, excuse me. Again, I'm still fighting this sickness, so I apologize. Another frequently asked question is what do I do if I suspect a disability, but my child doesn't have a diagnosis, or I'm concerned, should I get a diagnosis or not? And I would encourage you not to shy away from a diagnosis, because my thought, and it's been my personal experience too, is that with knowledge comes power and gives us understanding. So think of it as a diagnosis and not a label. I don't think we should be afraid of labels. I think if you suspect a learning disability, particularly if there's a history of learning challenges in the family, because learning disabilities do run in families, and in particular, like dyslexia is neurologically based, so it is familial. To consider starting with a thorough speech and language evaluation, and you could go to your primary care doctor, pediatrician, and ask for a referral for a private speech and language therapist. But most learning problems are rooted in language processing problems. And so getting a thorough assessment where they would look at receptive and expressive language processing. As a reading specialist and as a dyslexia interventionist, that's what I always encourage families to do. If you haven't gotten any kind of diagnosis or any testing done, start there, because that's going to help you home in on some things and rule some things out. So students with reading problems, or older students who are okay with decoding, but they're still really struggling with reading, or they're slow with reading, or their reading comprehension is poor. Besides getting a speech and language evaluation, I usually encourage parents to see a developmental optometrist and have them look at visual processing, not vision acuity, because often students can pass just the vision screening, or they might have fairly good eyesight, but they can be encountering visual processing problems that can be overlooked. So things like convergence and tracking, visual perception, things like that. And that was one of my daughter's issues, because she was a really good reader, a really good decoder, but her rate was kind of slow, and she would fatigue and her eyes would water. She would complain of headaches when she read, and we got reading glasses, and that really didn't help her. But she was having these visual tracking problems, convergence issues. And so by offering her some exercises and then also providing some accommodations around those visual processing things, that really helped her. So we want to try to home in on, why is the learning difficult for this student? Is it a reading problem in that it's a decoding problem, or is it a fluency problem, a vision tracking problem? Or does the student have underlying language processing problems, the expressive or receptive language processing, or what's called phonological processing, which is really an auditory processing problem? And that's what my son has. And so, so starting with the speech and language therapist, maybe seeing the vision developmental optometrist to rule out visual processing, and then also a good audiologist that can assess the phonological processing, auditory processing, not just hearing acuity, not can they, raise their hand, yes, I hear that in my right ear, my left ear, but a more thorough evaluation where they put them in a soundproof booth and they do all kinds of exercises and games, and they speed speech up and they slow it down, and they play competing things in both sides. It's called dichotic listening, and they do all these different things, and they do look at phonological processing as well as many different areas of auditory processing. These types of medical evaluations can be very helpful in pulling things out and homing in on what's going on with my student. Why are they struggling with learning? So those are the things that I recommend first before jumping into a full evaluation with a psychologist, which can be expensive and is not often covered by insurance. But by going with the speech and language pathologist and an audiologist and a vision specialist, those are medical fields, and often your insurance will cover the bulk of it, if not all of it. So start there if you suspect a disability, and don't be afraid, because the more information we can get, and we have a more holistic view of why and what's going on, then that's going to help us to plan and to provide even better, more powerful instruction and intervention for our kiddos. And the other question that's a really frequently asked one is, where do I go to find funding or support for therapy and tutoring and services? And again, you can check with Compassion, the charitable arm of HSLDA, for help with funding. But sometimes medical insurance may cover a portion of therapies. Although you have to, meet that deductible. private national charitable organizations like Scottish Rites provide speech and language and a dyslexia intervention. Sometimes school districts may provide homeschoolers, again, with the related services or therapy. Now, if your child has already had an IEP, if your child was in public school and they had an IEP, and you're just beginning homeschooling, or you're thinking about it, or you're going to pull them out and they have an IEP, you could ask the school to shift that IEP to what's called an ISP, a service plan, and they could continue getting some of their therapies. They may be amenable to that. But again, you have to weigh that out if you want to continue that relationship with the public school or not. Other organizations like ARC and Easter Seals, and I mentioned Scottish Rites already, but Friendship Circle, Johnny and Friends, these are all national charitable organizations that lend support for people with disabilities. They provide training, transportation, employability training, mentoring, classes, and some of those organizations have grants and scholarships as well. Johnny and Friends is Johnny Erickson Tata's organization, and she has a directory of churches that have disability ministries, and they have a listing of scholarships that are available for students with disabilities as well. So those are some ways to find support. And again, don't forget to check out SPED Homeschool. They have some great resources there as well, and HSLDA does too. So there is help and support out there. Sometimes you just have to beat the bushes, so to speak. But can always feel free to reach out to me, and I can help you as well. All right. And lastly, I want to just talk a little bit about some ways, some practical ways when you're at home working with your child who is struggling, or these atypical learners, kids that really don't fit in the box or fit in the mold. How do I help them? How do I teach them? How do I reach them? What are some strategies? Tell me some things that work. And first of all, just really, it depends on the kid, and every kid is different. Each person is truly fearfully and wonderfully made. I would encourage you to be a keen observer of your children, listen to them, ask good questions, and just try different things. And if something doesn't work, try coming at it a different way. Sometimes it can be, maybe I'm just not the best person to try to get this concept through with this kid. So maybe dad tries it, or sibling, or grandma or grandpa, or a friend, or somebody different. So because sometimes, I won't say sometimes, often, frequently, we teach the way we like to learn, but the child that we're trying to help is totally opposite. So I have to change my approach and my teaching to fit them versus the way that I would think about it, or come at that, or want to learn it. So that's where being a keen observer and listening to the child and being willing to try things a different way, us as teachers, as parents, and trying to stay calm when things are hard, and being encouraging, and not losing our temper, and just trying to be encouraging with them that, hey, I know this is hard, or let's take a break, or we'll come at it a different way, or, oh, I'm sorry that didn't work. Let me try it a different way. To just be gentle and encouraging. But some things that work are direct instruction. That's just good, solid teaching. Multisensory and being very explicit, not leaving things to guessing, because a lot of times kids who struggle, they don't generalize well. They don't make deductions or infer things easily. So we should just tell them explicitly, this is the rule, or this is the process, or this is the spelling pattern. TION at the end of a word says shun, it's like direction, or it's chin, like mention. So TION can say this or that, and then give them explicit examples. So this direct instruction, being explicit, being systematic, giving lots of repetition and time and practice, giving them models, color coding things, giving them the steps in the process and an exemplar to refer to, as well as keeping that chart or steps in the process handy. It's a reference sheet. It's not a cheat sheet. It's a reference sheet for them, using charts and graphs and graphic organizers, things for them to refer to are helpful. And those are learning tools, and they'll use them for a while, but hopefully after a while, they won't need to keep referring to them. I do want to talk about best methodology for teaching reading just briefly. Years and years of reading research testifies to the fact that teaching phonics and sight words is best. For 70 to 75% of the population, no matter which way we teach, whether it's phonics or a whole word methodology, some might call that like see and say, the sight word approach. For 70 to 75% of the population, it doesn't matter. They're going to learn how to read, but the other 25 to 30% of the population needs direct, systematic, phonics-based instruction that's multisensory. And the fact is that methodology works for everybody. So if you use good direct instruction, something that's multisensory, like an Orton-Gillingham-based reading program that teaches phonograms, the patterns, and the most commonly used rules for spelling and decoding, then your kids are going to do well. So there's really good reading programs out there in the homeschool community that are Orton-Gillingham based. So we want to use phonics approach, but we also want to read aloud to our kids and let them have lots of time to read. So hearing good literature and being read aloud to, discussing good literature, but also being taught explicitly phonics and giving the opportunity to read good literature. This is all solid instruction, particularly for kids with learning challenges. Again, we want to use visuals, graphic organizers, charts, flow charts, the steps in the process. You can teach silly songs to help them remember things if they're struggling to remember. Typically, kids that struggle with auditory processing, funny enough, they like, and kids with dyslexia, they are often auditory learners. They need to hear it because they're struggling to decode. They're struggling with reading, so they need to hear it. So we want them to see it, but also hear it. So we want to teach with visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and tactile. And that's for math and for reading. Lots of interaction, lots of talking, good questions, giving them projects and hands-on things, investigations, helping them to want to learn, motivating them by tapping into things that they're interested in, giving them things to do, activities that are real and relevant, meaningful, not just filling in a workbook page. Giving them integrated learning is powerful. It's one of the reasons I think Sunlight is a great curricula, is because learning is overlapped, it's connected, it's more thematic. So they're learning subjects, but it's connected and interwoven in meaningful ways. So they're learning things around a certain time period in history, for instance. The skills are taught across subjects, across disciplines, but they're all connected around this common theme of a history time on the timeline. And that can be really powerful, particularly for kids who are struggling and learning is disjointed for them and they don't generalize well, like I said, so they don't see how things connect. They don't come to those conclusions easily. So providing them with a curriculum that's connecting and connecting those dots for them and is interweaving things can be super powerful for them and really helpful and motivating. And it gives them fun projects to do as well. So again, the one-on-one direct explicit instruction where you're mediating the learning, you're asking them questions, you're the more knowledgeable other that's coming alongside the guide, helping them, you're facilitating, you're showing, you're demonstrating, you're guiding, you're learning with them, and you're taking turns. And you're giving them concrete, hands-on learning. Pictures are powerful. We want to go from concrete, hands-on, and pictorial and video-driven instruction can be powerful as well, to then moving to the abstract. So we always want to go from concrete to abstract. And we want to start with what kids know. We want to build on what they know and go from known to new and help make those connections, allowing time to repeat and rehearse and recite and review the steps in the process or review new information. The multisensory learning, asking good questions, having rich and fun discussions. Again, reading aloud is one of the single most important things you can do to help your child, particularly struggling readers. Reading aloud to them at a level that's a couple grades higher than where they're able to read independently, that's going to lift their listening comprehension and it's going to enrich their vocabulary and help expand their background knowledge. Kids are able to learn at a listening level a couple years higher than where they're actually functioning. So reading aloud to them every day as much as possible is powerful. And it also helps them to learn how to make what's called a gestalt, visual imagery in their mind, which is a really important cognitive skill. And playing games. Don't forget the power of playing games because they learn so much by playing games. Social skills and strategy and logic and reasoning, and they can apply new skills that they're learning in academics while they're playing games. Playing games can be a great way to review information and even making up your own games to go with what they're learning in history or science can be really, really fun, and allowing your kiddos to make games and create games, whether it's a board game or a card game, or we're going to make our own Jeopardy game. So those are just some fun ways to help kids who are struggling or maybe are reluctant learners, kids with special needs. And I hope that you find these tips and ideas helpful. And I also hope that you feel encouraged that you can do this. So just remember, don't go it alone. And think about your 3 prongs of support that you're going to educate. You're going to use a good curriculum and some good strategies that we talked about and ways of teaching that I shared. So you're going to educate them with that one-on-one and multisensory learning and explicit direct instruction, but also remediate by getting some therapy or tutoring or intervention in place, and then accommodate them. Those are ways to support and find support yourself. Don't go it alone and tap into community. But be confident that you can do this because you know your child better than anyone and you love them better than anyone. And slow and steady really does win the race. Just teach them at their functioning level, tap into their strengths and their interests, and just have fun and find joy in the journey. And it's not going to be perfect. It's going to be perfectly imperfect, but that's okay. And you can do this and you can really provide your child with a really good individualized education plan. That's what homeschooling is. So I hope that you're blessed. Take care. Thank you for joining me on this session. Again, I'm Faith Behrens, homeschooling mama of two. You're not alone, and I'm one of HSLD's special needs consultants. And we're here for you too to make homeschooling possible. So thanks for joining this session. Happy to be with you. Bye-bye.